Listen carefully. When you go into no contact, you think the silence is the message. But for him, the silence is the question. And questions make people curious, especially when they're used to having access to you whenever they want. When a man realizes you were no longer available, no longer reacting, no longer chasing, something shifts in his mind. Not because you disappeared, but because control disappeared. And when control disappears, testing begins. After no contact, he tests to see if he still has emotional access to you, because emotional access is what made the connection feel secure for him in the first place. When you were available, responsive, and emotionally open, he never had to wonder where he stood. He could reach out and get reassurance, attention, warmth, or even conflict on demand. That consistency becomes something people take for granted. The moment you remove it, the comfort disappears and curiosity replaces it. He starts wondering whether the emotional door is still unlocked or if it is finally closed. A man who tests after silence is trying to read your emotional temperature without directly asking for it. He doesn't want a deep conversation right away because that would require vulnerability and accountability. A test feels safer. It might look casual, harmless, even playful. A short message, a reaction to your story, a callback to an inside joke. But underneath that small gesture is a bigger question. Do I still matter to her emotionally, and can I still trigger a response? Your reaction tells him more than your words ever could. If you respond with instant warmth and intensity, he learns that the emotional connection is still on standby. If you respond with anger and long explanations, he learns he can still stir your feelings. Even negative emotional access is still access. Testing is about checking influence. He is measuring whether your emotional system still moves when he pushes a button. That measurement helps him decide how much effort he needs to invest next. Little effort if access is easy, more effort if access is limited. This is why silence changes the dynamic. Silence forces him to step out of assumption and into uncertainty. When uncertainty appears, behavior changes. He becomes more observant, more strategic, sometimes more charming. Not always because he wants to rebuild, but because he wants to confirm whether the emotional bridge still exists. People rarely test what they are completely done with. Testing happens where there is unresolved attachment, unfinished ego, or lingering interest. And the more centered and self-controlled you remain, the harder it is for him to read your emotional availability, which increases the perceived value of that access in his mind. His small messages are probes, not always signs of commitment. And understanding this difference protects you from reading intention where there is only curiosity. A short text, a reaction, or a casual check-in can feel meaningful when it appears after silence, but the size of the message often reflects the size of the effort he is willing to risk at that moment. A probe is designed to be low investment and low vulnerability. It lets him test the emotional waters without stepping fully into responsibility. If the response is cold, he can retreat and pretend it was nothing. If the response is warm, he gains reassurance and leverage without having offered clarity. These probes are usually framed in neutral or playful language. He might say he was just thinking about you, ask a random question, or bring up a shared memory. The tone is intentionally light, because light messages are easy to send and easy to defend. He is not declaring feelings, not addressing past issues, not proposing change. He is opening a small door and watching how fast and how widely you open it back. The purpose is feedback, not progress. He wants data about your availability, your mood toward him, and how quickly you re-engage. People often confuse relief with reconciliation. The relief of hearing from him again creates a rush of emotion, and that emotion can lead to overinterpretation. One message becomes hope, two messages become a story, and suddenly a minimal gesture is treated like a serious return. But commitment sounds different. Commitment communicates direction, accountability, and intention. It includes statements about what he wants, what he is willing to do differently, and how he plans to show up consistently. A probe avoids all of that weight and stays safely in the shallow end of conversation. Probes also help him manage his ego. He may want to know whether he still has a place in your mind without risking rejection through a deeper approach. A small message protects pride. If ignored, he loses little. If welcomed, he gains emotional confirmation. That's why probes often appear at moments of boredom, loneliness, or nostalgia, rather than at moments of decisive action. They are emotional feelers, not relational foundations. Your interpretation and pacing matter more than the message itself. When you treat a probe like a proposal, you raise your emotional exposure while he keeps his minimal. When you answer with balance and restraint, you match the level of investment being offered and keep the power of clarity on your side. The test is about your boundaries and self-control, not your love, because love is assumed. Boundaries are what are uncertain. He already knows you had feelings. What he does not know is whether those feelings still overrid your standards. Testing is a way to see if your emotions are still in charge or if your discipline has taken the lead. When someone reaches out after distance, the hidden question is not, do you still care about me, but do you still lose control when it comes to me? That distinction changes how you see every interaction that follows silence. Boundaries show up in timing, tone, and depth of response. If he sends a casual message and you immediately open the door to emotional conversation, you reveal that your limits are still flexible under pressure. If he avoids accountability and you still provide comfort, attention, or validation, the signal he receives is that access does not require effort. Boundaries are not spoken first. They are demonstrated through behavior patterns. The test is designed to see whether those patterns have changed or remain easy to predict. Self-control is measured in emotional regulation. He may say something slightly provocative, nostalgic, or flattering just to see if it pulls you back into the old rhythm. Old rhythm means fast replies, emotional language, and over-availability. When your responses are paced and grounded, it disrupts the script he expects. That disruption is what confirms growth. Anyone can say they've changed. Very few can communicate it through calm, consistent behavioral shifts under emotional pressure. Many people believe passing the test means proving devotion, but in reality, it means proving stability. Devotion without boundaries feels good but carries no weight. Stability with boundaries commands respect. If your mood rises and falls based on his level of attention, the test reveals emotional dependency. If your mood remains steady, regardless of his approach, the test reveals emotional independence. Independence does not mean coldness. It means choice instead of impulse. Control is also reflected in what you refuse to discuss too early. When you don't rush into relationship talk, don't reopen old wounds on demand, and don't provide emotional reassurance without mutual clarity, you show that access now has structure. Structure is unfamiliar to someone who is used to emotional availability on demand. That unfamiliarity forces him to reassess how he approaches you and how seriously he must show up if he wants deeper engagement again. Quick emotional responses usually fail the test because they reveal that your internal state is still being driven by his presence rather than your own center. Speed and intensity of reply communicate more than the actual words. When you answer instantly with excitement, relief, or frustration, you show that the emotional switch is still easily flipped. From his perspective, that means the dynamic has not really changed. The silence may have been long, but the leverage is still the same. Emotional impulsiveness tells him he can re-enter your space without earning new ground. Fast responses are often emotional reflexes, not intentional choices. They come from the surge of surprise, validation, or unresolved attachment. Your nervous system reacts before your standards do. That reaction feels honest, but honesty without regulation weakens your position. Tests are designed to trigger reflex because reflex is predictable. If he knows exactly how you will react, he doesn't need to increase effort or clarity. Predictability lowers perceived value and lowers the incentive for him to step up with seriousness. Emotional replies also tend to over-deliver. Instead of matching the level of his message, they expand beyond it. A simple hey receives a paragraph. A light joke receives deep vulnerability. A neutral check-in receives emotional reopening. This imbalance shifts the frame of the interaction. He stays safe and minimal while you become exposed and invested. The more you overexpress early, the less mystery and leverage remain. Restraint is not manipulation, it is emotional pacing. There is also a psychological effect called reassurance release. When someone wonders whether still matter and gets immediate emotional confirmation, their urgency drops. The chase energy cools. Curiosity gets satisfied too quickly. Slow, composed responses keep uncertainty alive longer, and uncertainty is what creates respectful attention. Emotional flooding removes uncertainty and replaces it with comfort, and comfort without commitment rarely motivates change. Measured responses signal that you are thinking, not reacting, that you are choosing engagement rather than falling into it. A pause before replying communicates that your time and emotional energy are organized, not on standby. Calm tone communicates that your mood is not being pulled by every incoming message. Brief answers communicate that conversation must build gradually rather than reopening instantly at full depth. When emotion leads, boundaries blur. When pacing leads, standards stay visible. The difference shows in response length, emotional charge, and availability rhythm, and he reads those signals carefully, even if he never comments on them directly. Passing the test means demanding clarity, consistency, and intention, because renewed contact without these three elements only recreates the same unstable pattern with a different starting date. When someone returns after distance, words are easy and energy can feel convincing, but structure is what proves sincerity. Clarity is about knowing why he is back and what he actually wants now, not what he vaguely feels. If his language stays blurry, just seeing how you are, going with the flow, no pressure, then the connection remains undefined. And undefined connections benefit the person who wants access without obligation. Clarity shows up when he can state purpose without being pushed. He can explain his interest, acknowledge the gap, and speak directly about what kind of connection he wants to rebuild. If you have to drag clarity out through repeated questioning, the intention is weak or undecided. Strong intention speaks plainly. It does not hide behind charm, humor, or distraction. When you require clarity, you are not being difficult. You are setting the minimum entry requirement for emotional access. Consistency is the behavioral proof. Anyone can behave well for a day or a week. Testing periods often include short bursts of extra attention designed to quickly restore closeness. Consistency is measured in rhythm, not intensity. Regular effort, reliable communication patterns, and steady respect matter more than dramatic gestures. Inconsistent effort is one of the clearest signs that the test is about regaining access, not building something solid. When you watch patterns instead of moments, mixed signals become easier to recognize. Intention is revealed through willingness to invest and adjust. A person with real intention accepts reasonable expectations and does not resist basic structure. He does not disappear when standards appear. He does not call you demanding for wanting direction. He does not push to keep everything casual when emotional benefits are involved. Intention moves toward definition, not away from it. It asks how to move forward instead of how to keep things open-ended. Demanding these qualities is mostly about what you accept and what you decline. Nay, you don't need speeches or ultimatums. You simply don't reward vagueness with deep access. Don't reward inconsistency with full availability, and don't reward charm with instant trust. Your pace becomes selective. Your engagement becomes conditional on substance. Questions are answered, but emotional privileges are earned gradually through repeated aligned behavior rather than persuasive words alone.